Hello everyone, welcome back. This is the fifth episode of the Low Blood Pressure podcast. And so some of you keen viewers might remember in the first episode, first podcast, we mentioned, there was a man that we are a fan of that we would love to have on the podcast. And, only 5 podcasts in, here he is. It's Charles Burns, everybody.
Welcome on. How are you doing? Hello.
Yeah,
Great to have you on, Charles.
Yeah, we're delighted to have you. Just one quick note. We're well aware that a lot of the people listening were probably also at the talk, brilliant talk that Charles put on our school the other week. So we'll try and not talk about the same things we spoke about then, so you're not hearing the same thing over again. We're going to try and make it a little bit different, perhaps go a bit more in depth into, I don't know, well, we'll see, won't we? But yeah.
So, Charles, do you want to just start, off from the beginning and sort of, I know you mentioned this at the talk, but sort of how you came to appear on The Apprentice?
Yeah. So a shortened version. I've always been that kid, I'd say from about age 13, very entrepreneurial, sold sweets on the school bus, all that sort of stuff. Just was making money on money, and then every opportunity that came around, I'd take that and I'd run with it. And then it got to a point where I was applying for university. I went to university. Very short period of time. Then I decided I wanted to go into retail, worked in Tesco management and also in the head office. I then was fired from Tesco, came into my family business, which is a retail jewellery business. They were struggling. I turned that business around. And then how The Apprentice came about is quite simply, one morning I was just flicking through my Facebook feed and there was a last day to apply advertisement that I saw. Clicked on it, it was a couple of questions, filled them in, and before you know it, I'm on the screen and here I am. So that's pretty much the simplified version.
That's brilliant. So it wasn't planned at all, literally like no planning went into it whatsoever.
No, there was absolutely no plan. There was as simple as when I was your age and younger, so it's his 13th year now, I'm coming up 25, so probably near enough 12, 13, age 12, 13. It started, I'd watch it, I'd always watch when Dragon's Den's on or anything business related. I've always just been interested in, as I'm sure some of you guys and your listeners have as well. And just watched it, and again, similar to all the other viewers out there, I just thought I can do better than these bloody idiots. And, then I became one of those bloody idiots. So that's kind of what happened.
What I've always wanted to know, Charles, is that, so you apply online, and then what happens from there? What's the process like of actually getting onto the show? Because there's more to it than that.
Yeah, there is, for sure. So, I'd say it changed it somewhat this year. I did actually tell them to change it, whether they listened to me or not. I'm going to take that. I don't know what they did or they didn't, but what it was last year is, you answer these 5 questions, which are really straightforward. With blood sugar, what makes you stand out from the crowd and that kind of thing. The next process then was you're invited to an assessment day, and there's various things going on that day. But prior to that, you've got to fill in a 2-page document, effectively, which goes into more depth about you. It's a bit like your CV. And there's various questions. One that sticks out that I remember, which is a great question, was if you could commit any crime and get away with it, what would it be and why? My particular answer to that was, I thought, how do I say it, be clever without being stupid? And that's quite a difficult thing to do. So given what I do in the luxury watch trade, I said, well, I'd probably bring a Patek Philippe, £1 million Patek Philippe from the States to the UK without paying duties. So it's it's bad, but it's not killing someone bad, right? So, it's those sort of things. And at this point, you give a brief outline as well, if I'm not mistaken, of your business plan, but you don't actually submit any plans until much later. And then there's just stages and stages. I won't ruin it because I know that's applying. I don't want to give them an unfair advantage, etc. But this year,
please do if we're thinking to apply.
This year, I know for a fee, I'll do that. This year, for a fact, I know that they have removed the initial 5 questions, and instead, I think there's a much more in-depth document you had to fill in at the outset, which is much better because last year you had something like 8,000 people apply, and of that, I would suggest probably 5,000-6,000 get an interview, and it's far too many people because they're not sifting through those they're actually interested to be not. If it was a 2-page document that I had to fill in at first, I actually wouldn't be here today because I wouldn't have done it. Simple as that. I would have just gone, oh, that's too much effort. And same with lots of people. So you'd have lost some people, gained some other people. But I think really it's crucial to kind of, with any process, that you do as much as possible, filter as quickly as possible to the people that are interesting and relevant.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I did also have one question about the Apprentice, actually, which is that, like, I mean, quite a few people also say that, like, it doesn't really test your business skills. Would you say, like, it was actually, like, a good test of your business skills and predicting how well you do working with Lord Sugar, or do you think it's maybe a bit too much entertainment orientated?
Yeah, sure. So you have to remember that the primary goal, or not the primary goal, but what most people know this program for is being on television. And it brings in this year something around 8.5 million viewers. And to put that into context, it's not exactly difficult maths, but it's, 1 in 7, 1 in 8, right? And when you then take out people of pensionable age, when you then take out toddlers, all the rest of it, when I'm actually walking around and meeting people, it's more like 1 in 4, 1 in 5. So it's a lot of people watch this program. Whether they say they do or they don't, I can't tell people stop me and say, oh, I don't watch it, but my sister's aunt's uncle's brother does. I'm like, well, I mean, statistics tell me that's not true, but okay. If everyone's sister's aunt's uncle's brother is watching it, then everyone's watching it, because by the time you get around enough people, that's what happens. So going back to your question, that's, it's entertainment first. It has to be, because that's what allows for the platform, right? So that's the main thing. And then what Lord Sugar would say, and what Karen and Claude would say, and the business side of it is, of course, the £250,000 investment is absolutely crucial to someone's business. It's the equivalent of winning the business lottery, because if you look at companies' house records or anything of the previous winners, they've all done exceptionally well. And who could say whether or not they would have got there themselves or whatever? But there's no doubt that it's not just that $250,000 that is injected in, and it is injected into their bank accounts once they win. It's also the black book, as it were, or the contacts list, and also the kudos that goes with having Lord Sugar as your partner. That comes with certain strings, no question. But obviously, some people can work well within those criteria, and some cannot. Coming back to your question a bit further, when you say, does it demonstrate my personal skills or my fellow candidates' skills? It does in some respects, because you've got to remember this is a very short period of time for an investor to put £250,000 into your business, right? And then normally how quick is you'd go, you'd present, you'd pitch your business, they do due diligence, they do all the rest of it, then you go back, and this can be a couple of months process, right? Sometimes it's quicker, sometimes it's longer, right? When you're trying to raise capital. But the difference here is these businesses are non-existent, or that's supposed to be how they work. Not quite this year, but that's normally the way they work. So he has to really see in a very intensive way what skills you have. And sometimes, I've said this before, there's so much footage you don't see because, each task is longer than what you see on TV, obviously. It's massively edited. It's 140 hours, 120 hours or so per episode. So there's a lot within there that you don't see that Karen and Claude do, and they feed back 4 or 5 times a day to Lord Sugar. So when someone's in there, maybe you looked at myself, some people didn't, thought, oh, definitely should have gone on week 1, made a terrible error there. Well, what you're not seeing is actually all the stuff that I did well, possibly, because that doesn't fit the storyline, right? So there's the storyline element to this, which is edited well, and there's also the business side of it. And the business side overrides the storyline. That's the important thing to say. So Lord Sugar makes the decision like wholeheartedly himself. There's no someone in his ear. There's no anything like that. If he wants to get rid of 7 people 1 week, that's what happens. It's really that simple. Or no one 1 week, and that also happens. But that's how it works. So, yes and no, right? It's entertainment, but also, the time pressures it's all completely fictional, right? The time pressures, you don't have those time pressures. You don't have the scenarios that you have. But at the same time, the tasks that you've got to do are so complex in some respects and so unusual that it tests skills that you don't think are being tested. But when I look back at it, for example, decision making, and the decisions might be from, picking one piece of poo via another piece of poo or something really straightforward like that. Or both decisions are going to make it look silly, but it's about why are you doing what you're doing? How do you recover from when, a customer's not happy or all these different situations. So they are real skills that you're seeing. They're just presented possibly with a gloss that is very entertainment focused. Is that a simple or long answer way of pulling it?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
You said, Charles, throughout the process, you had many good moments and many bad moments. One of my favourite tasks was week 1, probably my most entertaining task to watch.
Sure.
So I had you as my candidate. So can you just take us back and sort of describe what went on in that task and why you think you ended up in the firing line?
Yes, sure. So a little, not spoiler, but a little secret that most people don't know is in that first task, I actually put myself forward for project manager, believe it or not. Well, you probably can believe it when you saw how many times we did that.
Yeah.
You kept getting said no to. I was devastated every time.
Exactly. So I put myself forward for that. Now they edited it out, which is again part and parcel of the storytelling. And then Danny mentioned that he had manufacturing experience, and pretty much I think it was James or one of the guys, I think it was James, pretty much said, "Oh, that's a given. You have to do this task." The issue being, and what comes to light afterwards, is if you're not a leader of people, a natural leader of people, or someone that can very, very quickly gain respect and authority from others, then it doesn't matter what experience you've got and how relevant the task is to you. It's a project management task. It's not about who knows how to manufacture stuff, right? You can always input, and that's what should have happened. It should have been an inputting, maybe sub-team leader, or even still, it doesn't make a difference, right? Everyone can input. The fact that he had experience in the task was just really irrelevant. So he was kind of initially put into a position where he didn't want to be. That was really obvious. We then kind of, when we're sitting around the first table, and Claude was in the backdrop, if you remember, we're discussing names, discussing all these different things. It was again very obvious that he had no concept how to manage strong personalities. Now, whether or not that has any bearing on his real life, he runs a successful business, so probably he is good at doing this, but maybe he was overwhelmed. I don't know why, but I'm sure he'll tell you himself. In that initial day, he was not authoritative in any way, shape, or form. And it was kind of, I was looking at this thinking, we're going to lose this task because we're making decisions too slowly. This means we're going to get the worst located to sell burgers, the worst decisions, worst options. So I started to kind of just say, look, right, guys, okay, stop, because we're just going over and around in circles. I said, right, guys, what's the consensus? I started to kind of lead it from behind.
Told him to make a decision.
Basically, yeah. And you didn't see all that sort of stuff. So I
saw that, yeah.
And it was, right, because we got decisions made, otherwise we would have literally sold 0 burgers, right? Then what happens is, okay, Charles, right, I'd like to be sub-team leader, and really, I think he recognised there that I was the strong candidate at that point in time. People were listening to me, all the rest of it. So that was one thing.
The main man.
Yeah, the next day, so to speak, when we're doing making the burgers again, it was absolute chaos in the kitchen. You didn't notice it so much on TV, but again, his lack of delegation, organisation meant that we had, I think it was 9 people running around like headless chickens. I mean, it was just, that was the main reason, again, because I was brought back in, you don't see that, but the main reason that we were late that day, forgetting where we sold them, but we were late, was because of Danny's lack of leadership. We took ages deciding which bun to choose and which toppings, like all decisions that really, again, are so irrelevant, because if you don't get your burgers out on time, it makes no difference what you're selling and how much you're selling them for, because no one's going to buy them. So that was on our category number 1 error.
Charles, can I just? So I think you said he had difficulty leading, but do you not think in The Apprentice? Because as a viewer, I watch it, and I think this must be really difficult because I don't know if you have employees, but in the real business world, with some of the people, you'd fire them on spot. But is it not really difficult to manage personalities?
It is.
You have to have these people in your team.
It certainly is, but going into the process that, and I said this in the talk, and I'll repeat it again because it's vital to understand, is that on the one hand, the people you're working with are your teammates. On the other hand, they are competitors. And those, you have to remember that the whole time. So if you put certain people, you think you're being clever strategically in certain positions, they'll come and bite you in the arse if and when you lose that task. If you, again, and vice versa. So what you've got to do is you've got to behave like it's a normal business. You've got to behave that way. Put people who are in the right place, have the right skills, whether you're friendly or not friendly, that's a business skill as well, right? You're going to get into positions yourselves, and everyone does, where you've got employees or colleagues, etc., that you don't get on with. And it is what it is, but that doesn't mean you can't work together. You just have to have common understanding, compromise and different things, and find where you can work together. So it's no excuse to say, because it's The Apprentice and different, well, look at Sarah Lynn, right? She had the same set of circumstances, but she managed to pull it together. So that's a testament to her character, right? The girls.
I'd argue that was actually a harder team to work on.
Well, precisely.
I'd agree.
Precisely. As it turned out later on, they were much stronger personalities and much harder to lead. Precisely. So to use but it's The Apprentice and it's not the norm and this. Well, we know that going into it, that's the whole point. I said to you just from my previous answer, it's an accelerated pressure cooker. And if you can't handle the pressure cooker there, well, guess what? When there's someone's money on the line, how are they going to trust you to handle the pressure cooker at that point? Because even if you interview people, even if you pick the people on your team that you think will work well and all the rest of it, situations occur, people get stressed, deadlines get missed, all the rest of it. And it's a test of character. And as I say, that first task is really about, you have to have someone there, that's the trick, someone that's level-headed, that's confident, composed, and all the rest of it. It's not about who understands the task. Later on, it becomes more about it because, your colleagues, competitors, teammates, whatever you want to call them, everyone becomes more aligned to the fact that whether you like the people or not, if you win the task, it's as simple as this. You don't have a chance to get fired, right? But if you lose the task and you quibble and you whatever, one of you can go, if not all of you can go. So you don't realise that at the beginning. At the beginning, it's all like each for themselves and I need to prove that I'm this and all the rest of it. But go back to your question. It was his poor leadership at that point. And as to why I was brought back in, it was basically because who's he going to hang? Whose head's he going to hang? He can't say, it's my fault, Lord Trigger, which he actually did, funnily enough, and that's why he went. You go, who's the next in line? It's me. And that's the sub-team leader's role. And you'll see a lot of the time, if you look back, the sub-team leader ended up going back in that boardroom because the task is run in two ways, that you've got two parts of your team. And if you're a project manager, you're not going to just blame it on yourself, are you? You're going to bring someone else in. Yeah. So the easiest second person is the sub-team leader, and then you normally pick someone else who's kind of irrelevant here or there, or they've made a loss or mistake and they'll end up going. But in my kind of instance as well, because I was the first week, the other thing you have to remember is it's not just the project manager that doesn't want his head going, it's all your other fellow candidates or competitors. Because what they see is if they say, Danny, you made the error, guess what happens? Danny then goes, well, maybe I'll bring you into the boardroom then. I've not got that power to bring her into the boardroom. As a game, if you look at it as a game, nobody at that point in time is going to side with me. Even people on my team that the previous day said they'd done a good job and all the rest of it, they're not going to side with me. They might not side with Danny either, but they certainly won't side with me. So what happens is Danny's team sided with him to not get brought in the boardroom, and all of a sudden, I think it was Andrew actually calls me disruptive. It sticks because everyone else goes, yeah, you're disruptive, this. It's like nonsense, but it sticks. And you get branded that, and then as you saw with me, for the next couple of weeks, you struggle to kind of shake that off, and then you do shake it off, and then for me, it was a bit too late because I hadn't done enough for those couple of weeks where I was a bit quiet, shall we say.
Yeah, and that's very true. I've heard a lot of candidates kind of work against each other a lot. And if someone's doing something badly, like a candidate is doing a pitch badly, then the rest of the candidates won't tell them it's bad. They'll let them keep going on because they know that if they keep going on like that, then they're the ones that are going to get fired. So I was asking, did you see anything like that happening this year?
Yeah, so I think the prime candidate for that sort of behaviour was Elliot.
Yeah, knew it.
And I think everyone saw that. Everyone knew that. The guy's incredibly intelligent, or he must be to do what he does and earn the money he does and all the rest of it, I'm sure. But what he was doing was just almost like keeping a tally of where people were slipping up, how they were slipping up, but not actually going and helping and assisting, but just kind of, I was called Mr. Hindsight, but he was the ultimate Mr. Hindsight and going and saying, here's what this one didn't do, versus here's what I did do. Or here's what I did about it, or I tried to do this, but actually everyone overruled me, which is fine because that happens. But if you at least show a bit of desire to change and put some ideas forward, he was just, as I say, waiting for mistakes, mopping them up, storing them in his head to go back into the to the boardroom. And I could have told you we're going to do that from the start, and I'll tell you why. Because we had a conversation off camera once in the house, and he was telling me how in episode season 4, this happened in episode, all these different scenarios. So he's obviously the sort of person that's really looked at the game plan and gone, well, if I play like this guy from this season or this girl from this season, this will be my trajectory, all the rest of it. Whereas I hadn't watched the program for 5 years, right? And who did better? Well, I mean, you can answer the one out for yourself. You've got to be real. You get rooted out very quickly. If you're playing a game that he was, if you're not strong enough, if you're not even strong enough, if you're not the character for Lord Sugar, there's a reason that he picks people he picks. They're because they're right for him. It's not necessarily they're the best person in the program, they're the best business person, they're going to make successful people. It's actually not to do with that. It's just who can he work with as a business partner? And that's what it comes down to. It's not, winning the Apprentice does not say out of those 18 people or extend that to the 8,000 that apply, you are the best quality person, you are the most successful, you are the wealthiest, you are however you define it. It means nothing of those things. What it actually means is you're the most suited to work with Lord Sugar. And that's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. That's just that, right? I could find you 10 other investors who would look at the 2 businesses and 2 people that won and go, they're not for me. I might go look at me and go, yeah, he's perfect, right? Or the other way around. So, as I say, he's just one. I always say to people, Lord Sugar is not UK business. He is not UK entrepreneurialism. He is just one person. It's one person's opinion. It's like Dragon's Den, right? There's plenty of businesses that have gone through Dragon's Den, not got offers, and have gone on to be very successful. Plenty that have gone on, not done very well, and the other way around. So it's just, again, business is just someone's opinion. And the way it's framed with the BBC and the editing is that he is the guru of all gurus. Well, he's not even the wealthiest guy in England. So, that's not even true by whatever metric you use. He's very successful. So all we're really saying here is that's a very successful person's view. And that's what it is, right? That's all you can take from it. You can't do anything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think something that some people might want to ask is do you think that you are sometimes the culprit of, dropping people in or, perhaps setting them up for failure and, pulling them back on it later? Or were you aware of it when you were doing it, or was it natural?
Do you think what you're asking if I think I purposefully put people in a position?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'll be honest, deadly honest with you. Even I know the one that people most think about is where I put Andrew as sub-team leader in the 8th task with the dogs, where eventually both of us went. And brutally honest with you, at that point in time, there was no agenda whatsoever. This is how it worked, right? I looked at who I had in my team. I looked at the fact that Michaela had won the last task. She'd also been involved in it, and you don't see it on camera, but off camera, I had the sense that she really wanted to take a step back, right? Now, in hindsight, which is beautiful, obviously, and I was called Mr. Hindsight, and I'll use that for a moment. What I would have done is gone, no, Michaela, you have dogs, this, you have to step up this week. You absolutely have to, But again, at the time, you'll get friendly with these people, you start to see where emotions are at, and I'm smart enough to go, well, I don't think you wouldn't like to be in that position again, right? You've already been stressed to the eyeballs, and as I say, without spoiling too much, it's not a week in between tasks, as I mentioned before. It's hours. So if a couple of hours ago she's telling me that, I need to kind of take a step back next week because this, you listen to it. But what you should do is you should be more selfish and go, no, you are the best at this and all the rest of it. And if at that point the person cripples and crumbles, then that's fair enough because that's business, right? You can't take days off in business. If someone calls you on a Sunday or a Monday or a Tuesday, you can't say, I've had a bad day yesterday, so I'm not going to answer the phone, I'm not going to do... Well, you can, but your business won't be around very long. So in hindsight, I should have done that, no question. Then I looked at the rest of the team. I had Anissa, I'd worked with Anissa, and I thought she was very poor. To be honest with you, she flaps around, she can't handle decisions, she can't make decisions, she can't handle teams. That's what I saw, right? Simple as that. I then had, who else had my team? I had Jade, hadn't worked with her all that much. She also had an allergy to dogs, which didn't help. So I thought she can't really be in that position. And she didn't like dogs at that point. Turns out she likes them now, which is a bloody miracle, but that wasn't at that point. Who else was there? Sarah Lynn. I'd seen, again, could I put her as sub-team leader? Probably yes. But again, 2 weeks before, I think it's a week before actually, with the advertising task, which she won, I thought she was poor, so I thought I don't see what the value is.
Pick up on that, Charles?
Yeah.
Before I forget, on that task, I specifically remember your interview at the cafe. You were very critical of Sarah Lynn, but then
that's true.
You didn't end up bringing her back into the boardroom. And what I was wondering at the time is, are these sort of things influenced by sort of like behind the scenes? Do you sort of get the vibe of who?
Without giving you too much of a spoiler, and I will give you a spoiler because I actually don't care. Think about it. I actually did bring her back into the boardroom, but I wasn't allowed to bring her back into the boardroom.
No,
so I swear. Wow. Yep. Truth. That is the truth.
You know what? I honestly, I had a feeling something like that had happened. Like, not that you'd done it and been prevented, but she seemed absolutely adamant that she'd been poor on that task and hadn't done it throughout.
She was poor, and I'll tell you why she was poor. Okay, she was poor because she was the one I see in the footage back. Obviously, it's edited, but at the end of the day, no one puts words in her mouth. So I've seen what I've seen. That's one thing I've got to tell you. That doesn't happen. So what you do see happens. It's just contextualized, right? But what I did see, and I don't see any reason how you can defend against this, okay, is she's in the pitch. She's pitching for, I think, the photography at the charity place. And it was at £500 or something. And then the lady, that's too much. And she dropped to 250 within about 13 seconds.
Of course, yeah.
That is not how, I mean, someone that's in a business, whatever you're turning over, you must know that's not how you behave. You don't do those things. The very bad business people believe that deals are won and lost on price. I can categorically tell you that doesn't happen. It's normally not about price. Price is one constituent factor, but when you really know how to negotiate, it's not about that. It's about delivery. It's about what can I offer. If you're offering superior pictures, if you can do it faster, if you can do it better, if you have you can offer key. In this instance, for example, if they could have said, right, what we'll do is we can put them into keyring sizes, all these different sizes, so you can sell them elsewhere. You add different things into the bundle. All of a sudden, that 500 v the 300 the other team are offering is very attractive because the upside is much greater. So, negotiation is not just about price. That was really annoying when I heard about that. And the second thing was she was with the other client, the other commercial client, in relation to the picking up of the poo at the country manor, let's call it. She agreed, and you saw it on the TV as well, she agreed to pick up the goose poo without any additional charge, without any fight or anything else. So, which basically what that's telling me is you will just literally, whatever the client says, you'll take it on the chin, right? There's the whole thing, the customer being right, and I've got no issue with that, and I do believe in that, right? However, you have to manage expectations. If you've said I'm providing you with a half full glass of water, and then afterwards you've all agreed it's signed and they pay for that, then they say, oh, would you mind adding a little bit of vodka to that? You don't just add a little bit of vodka and you say, well, we didn't agree that, but I certainly can if that's what you want, and this is what the cost is, and you decide whether you want it or not. That's how you negotiate. You don't just, you saw the same thing happen with the girls while they lost the Wembley task. Because the client said, we want this, we want this, we want this, we want this. And Elizabeth just basically had an open book and said, whatever you want, we'll
whatever you want, we'll give it, yeah.
Unless literally the client says, whatever it costs, we'll pay, even then you don't do that. You have to have some idea of a scope of a framework which you're comfortable working in. So those two reasons I looked at and thought, that is just diabolical. And on top of that, I'd seen her work in the previous week where I'd worked closely with her with Anissa in the advertising task. What effectively she was doing was, she was clock watching. She would say, oh, that's not great, Charles. I said, okay, well, what's your input? Although I haven't got any. Well, then shut up then.
Yeah, that's sort of an example of the editing as well, because you'd never guess that, would you? Mm-hmm. With her. But
you will. So to put the bombshell, and I'm sure that the BBC will probably now sue me, but that's great because I would love them to. I did indeed ask for her, or not ask for her. I said, this is who I'm bringing. I'm bringing Anissa back. Not Anissa. Andrew, because, unprofessional, the way he handled it, the way he rejected my phone call, that was the simple nut and bolts of it, right? And Sarah Lynn, because of the aforementioned reasons. And then Lord Sugar says, no, something, I can't remember exactly, I wish I could, I can't. He said something like, you're not bringing Sarah back, pick someone else. And he basically was saying, I want to get rid of Anissa. Now, if Anissa had been brought in place of me for Bruges, which she should have done, which is a different kettle of fish.
She would have gone, you said.
She would have gone then, and I might have been able to bring Sarah Lynn in. But I think Lord Sugar had enough of Anissa, and he just was like, I have to get rid of her. She can't go any further in this process, so I mean, what should have happened is he should have respected my decision, okay? And he said, right, I want Anissa to bring him back in as well, because he did that with Elizabeth.
Yeah, he did that the previous week, yeah.
Exactly. So that's what should have happened. It didn't, obviously. I mean, for whatever reason, he had a soft spot for her. As I say, he's now gone into business with her. Whether she's good, bad, or indifferent is irrelevant. He thinks he can work with her, mould her, whatever it is. And with me, he doesn't, and that's absolutely fine. I say that means nothing to do with, and this is what I have to categorically say, and it's not that I've got to be my bonnet or anything like that, but you have to understand, because you are effectively rejected from The Apprentice, doesn't have any indication as to how good or bad you are at what you do in your industry.
No, of course not.
Whatever. I can tell you for a fact, to remove me out of this situation, so it's impartial, someone like Sergeant Shaw, you might have looked at, thought it was good, bad, indifferent, it's irrelevant. I know for a fact what he's making a month profit in his new business, and it's far beyond what James is doing and what Sarah's doing. So that gives you an idea as to he's done that off his own back with no investment. So this is what I'm trying to say, is that you only obviously see and hear about the winners, but I guess if you looked back at the other 200 or so that have gone through the process, there'll be some that have gone back into their jobs because really they were never that interested. They just wanted to do the TV thing. Some that have started their businesses done very well, some that haven't, but some will have done better than the winners. But you don't hear about them because they're clever and they keep their profiles low.
Charles?
Yes.
So you're talking about, the winners, and they've all been successful. You mentioned this in the talk, but you didn't get onto it. And it's something we all found fascinating as soon as we found out.
Yes.
And it is Valente. It was revealed that Valente and Lord Sugar split, and you said you knew a bit about this, but we don't really know. So could you tell us?
Yeah. I don't know a lot about it. I've heard from the grapevine, let's put it that way. So whether it's true or not true, you can make your own minds up. But from what I understand is that the two of them, as I said, at one point in time, they were a good fit. And now, or a year ago, wherever it was, 6 months ago it was, they became not a good fit. So it wasn't really to do with the way the business was going and directions and that sort of thing. This is how I understand it. It was more that the two personalities became at loggerheads the whole time. And one decided to the other, and you can work out who that probably was. This isn't working, X, Y, Z. And that's basically what happened. I mean, if you look at, Joseph's, what he's doing now and the way he presents himself, particularly on social media, which is the only way that I know of him. I know a bit outside of that world as well. His approach is very much trying to be this celebrity in the limelight and all the rest of it. And what I know from my experience is Lord Sugar absolutely hates that. As much as he loves it for himself, he doesn't like others to have it, for whatever reason. So I think that was one of the main reasons as well, is that, he maybe looked at Joseph, and this is just me looking at things. I've not got any more knowledge than just seeing what I'm seeing and making my opinion. I see Joseph going after the limelight, the celebrity and all the rest of it, doing very well at the same time, don't get me wrong. And Lord Sugar going, well, how much better could you do if you just focus solely on the business? And if you looked at what happened with Michaela, actually, where really she could have won the programme with her eyes closed, I think. If I look at it, she's a right fit for him and all the rest of it. The reason she didn't go to that final was because the same reason. She had too many fingers in pies, and Lord Sugar wants, rightly or wrongly, the person to be solely focused on the one enterprise. And I think Joseph was focused on other things. Again, not saying it's right or wrong. And I think because of that, he's gone, right, well, actually, because you're not solely focused on it, let's part company and all the rest of it. I think it was amicable, but that's how I understand it.
Yeah, and I mean, you sort of touched on it earlier, but I think a lot of our viewers would actually like to know about the situation in Bruges, about what actually happened there, because you did allude to there being some obstacles and things put in place. Yes. From time to time, and we just wanted to know what actually happened there.
Sure. So, as I said to you before, you're seeing 30 minutes of a task per hour of episode you're watching, and there's over 100 hours of footage. So there's your first clue that something's a bit awry, because you're not seeing 90 hours and 30 minutes worth or plus of footage or more. So what actually happened in this instance was Anissa, we'd walked perfectly fine, no issue whatsoever, got to each location. In fact, one of the producer directors who was with us on the day said, I'm quite impressed as to how well you know the city, right? That just gives you an indication, right? So when you think about Bruges, going back to what I said before, you're seeing 30 minutes of a task, which was, in fact, in this instance, 2 days. And the footage is over 100 hours, right? So you can, at that point, you're sensing that maybe there's some editing going on. In fact, definitely, obviously, there's some editing going on. And what actually happened was we're walking around, no issue whatsoever. We go to the first place, which was the Beguinage, which is like a nunnery. The next stop was the hospital, if I'm not mistaken. So what happens is we're walking, no issue whatsoever. The production crew actually were quite impressed as to how well they even commented how well I knew where I was going. And bearing in mind, this is for your views to understand.
You wouldn't guess that at all from what you've seen.
Exactly. But for your viewers to understand, or your listeners, not viewers, because it'd be amazing if they could see me as well, but they can't. So for you guys to actually understand what's going on here. So the production crew, one of the guys actually that I got friendly with, you get friendly with the crew, is another thing to get you aware of. And that helps you sometimes, right? Sometimes you get a crew member that's useful, helps you out, some don't, right? It has a bit of an impact. Not major impact, but it can have a small impact. Anyway, in this instance, you just mentioned to me, he says, your directions are pretty good. And so your viewers are aware, none of us, in fact, I think Elizabeth had, but the idea is that no one knows where you're going. You get this map. You saw my map skills the night before where I had this pen. And to the hilarity of the bloody UK public, and also I think it was Russell Kane, I think, was trying to say how on earth was using a pen to work out, not Russell actually, it was what's the guy called that did my Hugh? Is it Hugh or so? Anyway, whatever he is, whatever the guy's name is, I forgot his name. A comedian on the panel was trying to kind of make a whole, judgment as to how on earth I had worked out how long the pen is in terms of walking time. And it's not that I have some special ability, but very conveniently on the video footage that you saw, what you didn't see was just below outshot there is a scale. And what I've done is I've looked at the pen. I've gone, well, the pen to the scale is X number of miles. I know roughly how long a mile takes to walk. So a pen length, for example, was 10 minutes worth walking.
Yeah. I thought you were magic, Charles. I thought you just, knew these things.
I'm afraid not. So it was simple as that. But again, that's something where if I hadn't been brought into the boardroom, they wouldn't have shown that because it has no relevance. All they've shown me is, this guy's a genius. He's figured out this is a scale, right? But in this instance, they're making me look an idiot and and so this is what I'm telling you, where they weave a tapestry, a story. They can tell it either way. So when we get to the next point of interest, which is I think it's called the St. Mary's or something hospital. It's going to haunt me, that place, which is our next point of interest. Anissa was giving the talk and the tour and the actual, talking about the different points of interest. And I said to her, I believe that's the entrance just ahead of us. And it was a distance of about 50 meters, right? Mm-hmm. Or a pen nib, in other words, if you like that way. So very, very short distance. She comes back and she says, no, it's definitely not that entrance because there is I think it's a Picasso gallery and it's a paid admission entrance. So now I'm looking at the map going, well, I know that this is a free admission entrance. I know it is, or we have to find one because there's no admission charge where we're going. So if the building is square or rectangular, then you just walk around the building and you find the actual entrance you're supposed to be finding. There's no issue whatsoever. So that's what we proceeded to do. And because if you work this out, because you're seeing 30 minutes of the task, because if you then work that back as there's 4 teams, okay, effectively 2 teams, but split into 2. Yeah. Because then you're actually only seeing of what I was doing, maybe 7 or 8 minutes. If 60 seconds to 90 seconds of that, it looks like I'm getting lost, you're then thinking that 25%, 30% of the time or more, we were getting lost. What you don't think, you know what I mean, if you actually work it that way. And that's why you look and you think, hold on a minute, he's definitely lost. But obviously that's not what happens because walking around a building took about 10 minutes of what was about 2 hours worth of tour. And by the way,
you weren't diverted for 3 hours or something?
No,
like they said in the boardroom.
And you know what happened? We get to the boardroom. And Karen's on a high horse as usual, saying, you were definitely walking more than 3 hours, and everyone was bored. And da-da-da. I said, I'll tell you why I wasn't, Karen. I said I had a watch on. as I always do, because that's what I do. It was 10, 15 minutes. Guess what? Never a mention of it after that. Because I knew I was right.
That definitely wasn't in.
Right, it wasn't, because it wasn't in, because it doesn't add to, Karen, Claude and Lord Sugar have got to...
Can't ever be wrong in the editing.
Yeah, exactly. They can't be wrong.
Exactly. They've got to be perfect. They're flawless people, and that's another bugbear, but let's just forget that for the minute. But so that's what
back to that, Charles. I'm telling you now.
Okay,
yeah, that's really good.
Right? And so in actual fact, it's a niece's error. And funnily enough, and I haven't thought this till just this moment, if Sarah Jane had actually been on the tour like she should have been, she would have seen that I was actually moving the tour perfectly fine, getting to each location, no issue whatsoever, all the rest of it. In actual fact, and I'm not even joking, it was going so smoothly that I thought we'd finish the tour too early. And we had to do the tour had to last an hour and a half. And I'd got to the places much faster than I initially thought, because I obviously put into a buffer of getting lost or whatever, because you never know what would happen when you're actually on the soil, as it were.
Yeah.
But it was perfect. And this is the thing. So the bizarre thing, again, you didn't really see this, and didn't see this actually, is we then went through the exact entrance that we'd been in previously. Because I said, Nice, let me just check this entrance out myself. And guess what? Hey presto, on the right-hand side was paid admission, on the left-hand side was public.
It didn't even show you arriving there.
Exactly.
That's true.
It doesn't add to the story. But if you watch back, if you want to actually really see editing in its worst, to be honest with you, there's a scene where I'm walking with my map, okay, and I'm wearing my coat. It then cuts to another scene, which it suggests in the timeline is exactly afterwards, but I'm not wearing my coat and someone else is wearing my coat. It then cuts to another scene, and I'm wearing my coat and the other person's not wearing my coat. So you look at that, and that'll give you a prime example. And I actually asked at the rap party a senior editor about that. He said it's one of the worst pieces of editing they've ever done. And I would notice it, but if you watch it back, you'll see. I obviously know because I know what happened and when. But yeah, that's. I'm not going to go too in depth about the editing, but that really will tell you what you need to know. That really it was Anissa's fault. And again, if Sarah Jane had been there, Anissa would have been, she didn't know what she was doing. She was taking us in the wrong direction in terms of what she was talking about, and she was the one that got us lost. So really, she should have gone. And I think probably Lord Sugar knew that deep down, or had heard that probably, and that's why he was so insistent on me bringing her back.
Quickly, like the thing is, the task was made to look like you had to go, right, and you were definitely going to be fired. But then you get to the boardroom, and you were obviously the least close to being fired. You were sent back even. He actually kept Andrew in after you. So you're actually nowhere near actually being fired.
Yeah.
But obviously you wouldn't guess that from the editing again. So just,
No, so, you have to remember as well, the editing has to give you an indication of who might be back in the boardroom, but it also has to be interesting enough so you don't necessarily know who's going to go, or which team are going to win. Because if it was so obvious, sometimes it's not made to be obvious, it just is obvious, right, as to who's not performed or whatever. But they want to obviously make it as much as they can. It's like you don't want to watch a football match when you know the result. Who does that?
Yeah.
No one does. You watch the highlight. So that's the reason that they have to make it. So that's exactly right. They had to pull out the worst bits that I did, or make it look as
justify you being there.
Justify being there, exactly. Otherwise, you'd have gone. Audience have gone. Well, and he should be there, not him. But they never, you notice that they never really do that. They normally works, and I think it's wrong as well, but that's a different story. It normally works that the three are in the bottom, you as the public go, oh, he was silly for that, she was silly for that, and this one. Because otherwise, if you've missed something or you don't understand it, it doesn't make sense as the entertainment factor.
Can I just ask, Charles, you've made a few negative comments kind of about the BBC and the whole way the show is run, and obviously they sound quite justified, but do you feel on the whole after the process you are a bit kind of, not necessarily bitter, but a bit disappointed with the way they've organised it and run it, do you say?
I'm not saying I'm bitter, but that's come across, and that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to give you an understanding that, and it's amazing, and I was obviously as naive or gullible, whatever you want to call it, as the Lex guy, right? So I'm not suggesting that I knew all this went on, all the rest of it. But for me, the programme should be, and was years ago, maybe I've not watched for a few years and that's why it's changed, or I don't know. It was all about business, and there was a bit of entertainment value there. So there were probably, it looked like anyway years ago, there were business tasks, and yes, of course things go wrong and this, and that's fine. But as I say, when you actually get involved with it, you realise, hold on a minute, this is not what this is. It's, entertainment massively, it's stitched up, it's, situation scenarios where Lord Sugar, Karen and Claude, or whoever you think is the best business person in Britain, Richard Branson, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, whatever, they'd all make mistakes because you can't not, right? Everyone makes mistakes in business, but when you then add time pressures, add this in, add all the different layers of complexity, plus production crews, camera crews, all the rest of it, it's impossible not to make mistakes. And I think it's just, what I don't like is, take me out of the scenario, is it should be painting a picture of entrepreneurialism, people wanting to get involved in business, all the rest of it. And I think sometimes what it does is it paints a picture of, oh, what a load of blinking idiots, and Lord Sugar's painted as this guru, and that's how you run businesses, by shouting at people, being negative and all the rest of it. What I'd much prefer is if it was more about, right, what's this person done very well, what have they done very well, and here's where you can improve upon. That's how the real world works, right? This old-fashioned approach of, you're awful, watch what you're doing, and all these puns, all the rest of it, for me, I think it's very dated. People love it, it makes great TV, right? Donald Trump makes great TV, right? Does he make a great president there? Well, he's very entertaining, people vote for him, but the jury's still out there. And that's my feeling, that the way in which Lord Sugar conducts it, the way it's conducted, is very old-fashioned. It's not entrepreneurial. If Richard Branson was running that program, imagine how different it would be. It would be a totally different program. If you take an advertising task, right? Richard Branson might have gone, you know what? I quite liked Elizabeth Yu in that advertisement. I'll tell you why. I thought it was different, original. You had a situation. You found a way to produce something, albeit it wasn't, it wasn't the status quo. But I quite like that. I enjoyed that. Whereas our advert was boring. It was like any other advert. If you're looking at the program and you take a task, for example, the advertising task, the car advertising task. If you had a different person at the helm of the program, let's take Richard Branson, someone entrepreneurial, right? Someone more modern entrepreneurial, let's put it that way. He might have looked at Elizabeth and the way James ran that task, not necessarily the way James ran it, but what they produced, and go, actually, they had a problem, they found a solution to the problem, and they produced something that was quirky, innovative, and different. Whereas what did we do? We produced a car advert that anyone could produce, that was boring, that is exactly what is there now. Yeah. Not very creative. Yeah, I thought that too, well, Lord Sugar would look at it and go, right, but that's what the industry wants. Whereas Branson would go, but that's what the industry needs. And that's the big difference, right? You have Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is a big believer in, people don't know what they're missing or what they want until I create it. Whereas that's very kind of, that's where he worked, right? But other people are very much like, well, don't fix it if it's not broken. And that's the Lord Sugar approach. It's very conservative. It's very kind of, that's not how you do business. Well, I'd like to show him Mark Zuckerberg. I'd like to show him all these people that are far wealthier than him, so you can't use that excuse, that run the business in totally different ways. Look at Elon Musk, right? You watch Elon Musk give a TED Talk, and you watch Lord Sugar, right? Take their wealth out of the equation. Neither is better or worse than each other. They're just polar opposites, and there's nothing right or wrong about either of them. And what I'm not a fan of on the program is they paint it's Lord Sugar's way of the highway, and unfortunately, because a lot of the audience, it turns out, are younger, so your age and younger, 13, 14, even younger, they're looking at that possibly, and they're maybe frightened of business, worried about business, going into it, getting involved, because they're seeing this scary man at the end of the table who's like the grandpa saying, no, you don't do this, don't do that, you're awful, all the rest of it. And I don't think it's very welcoming, and it doesn't do it justice, I don't believe. This is my personal opinion, it's not anyone else's, to promoting people to get involved in business. It's not positive, it's not a positive image, right? That's what I generally believe. But anyway, that's me, that's just my view. It's not, affiliated in any way to anyone else.
I agree, though.
I agree. Yeah, same. I definitely agree with that. And I mean, there is sort of like that sort of image and persona that it's not just Lord Sugar puts on as like radiates as well. It's also Karen and Claude also helping that, and you sort of
the interviewers as well in the interview.
Yeah, exactly.
So rude and disrespectful.
So there you go. So the interview is I am so happy. Let me tell you that I went out in week 8 beyond because I've got enough exposure that I need for my business. And what I've not got is this negative bile, and that's what it really is in week 11, where they just tear your business apart. Because the bits you don't see, as you're probably going to imagine, is where they're saying, actually, that's a good business plan and all the rest of it. All they show on TV is, oh, Joanna, where are you sourcing your product from? And if she stumbles, all the rest of it, they make, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, well, how many? Yeah, you don't have a scenario where you're in some massive open office expanse. You've got cameras focused at you. It's very unnatural. But obviously on TV, it looks like, oh, what an idiot, all the rest of it. She'll be very successful. She didn't come across well. She got a very poor edit game at editing. And I don't want the whole podcast about editing, but it has been, and that's fine. I mean, that's just natural. But, she got a very bad edit. Whereas, in my opinion, she's one of the strongest candidates. She won 10 tasks, or not 10, what was it, 7 or 8? I don't know what it was. She had the strongest record anyway.
Best record, yeah.
Yeah. And, again, the public will go, but why? It looks like she got carried all the way. I'm telling you for a fact that girl, that woman is very strong-minded. She's very good at what she does. And she'll be one of the most successful of this year's crop, without a shadow of a doubt, with or without Lord Sugar's money, obviously without at this point in time. She's worked for Google. She got promoted in Google within 1 or 2 years. If anyone that knows anything about business knows, to go into Google at the age of 21, 22 is your first job, get promoted and all the rest of it, and the thing that she managed to achieve is unbelievable, unheard of. So, yeah, that's what I'd say,
Yeah.
She got very bad at it.
Yeah, and Karen and Claude also radiate that kind of persona as well, which is kind of that.
Tell you something that's public knowledge in some respects. If you read Claude's book, and I can't remember what it's called, but I'm not going to plug it for him. He can plug it himself. His book, he actually mentions in there, and I've met his sons as well, who said the same thing. When the Apprentice first started 13 years ago, it was obviously quite a hubbub because it had been in the States. It was known as a big program, all the rest of it, and the BBC touted it quite heavily, I presume. He was asked by Luther to be an interviewer, and at that point he wasn't an advisor. It was Nick and Margaret, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And he gets his family around, gathers them round, 20, 30 people come to his house to watch this episode, and he's obviously never done TV before. So he knows he's filmed a day's worth of footage, and he's thinking, I must be on this for 10, 15 minutes, easily.
I've seen this before, yeah.
For about 2 minutes, if that.
Yeah.
And his family pretty much laughed in his face because for about 6 months he'd told them how great it was going to be and all the rest of it. And the reason he was only on TV was very, very short period of time was because he acted like a normal business person. He asked the questions, he was calm, he was amicable and all the rest of it. What he wasn't, which he turned to be in the second season, was the Rottweiler asking the tough questions and becoming the character that he is. And because he became that character, he then, guess what, became popular. He then, guess what, became the advisor, became this. So that isn't even a behind the scenes anything. That is him himself telling you that's what happened. So, that probably will cement in your minds what I've said to you before. It's not me being bitter or whatever. I'm just telling you how it is. And again, the BBC, the editors, all the rest of it can moan all they want, but it's out there in the public domain. It's also in Claude's book. It's also all over the place. Just for whatever reason, people don't connect the dots, don't care enough, and they just love the entertainment aspect. And that's fine. I'm not, disputing it. The entertainment aspect has given me this amazing platform, which allows me to speak to you today, which allows me to deliver the what hopefully was an interesting speech of the day over at your school.
Absolutely. A great talk, might I add.
Thank you so much. Which is available on YouTube as well for all those that are interested. I forget where Ivan posted in his YouTube. I should repost that myself at some point.
That's great. You did a good job there, didn't you?
Thank you very much. So as much as I'm criticizing and I'm saying this, that's just my character, right? Even myself, even my business, I'll always critique it. How could have done better? What's not good? It's not negative. Don't get me wrong. I'm very happy I did it. Do not regret it for one moment. I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity and all the rest of it. And my business going forward and even now it is really, really amazing and overwhelming way it's taken off. So there are fantastic things come out of it, but I just want to kind of make everyone, almost give them the story and you make of it what you will. All I'm saying is, I say what's already out there online and you can read up about it and you can make your own assessments. I'm just saying it from the horse's mouth what I saw. Other people have different opinions. Other people think, no, Charles, even candidates, no, you're talking nonsense. And everyone's got their own agendas, right? But this is just me telling you honestly what I believe it to be. And, make of it what you will.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really good to hear that your business is doing well. I'd just like to ask one question from one of our viewers that he submitted. He wanted, it's Theo, by the way, so if you're listening, shout out to Theo. He wanted to know, he wanted to know your opinions on Brexit, actually.
Ah, interesting. Good question. Very good question. I was having this discussion actually just the other day, speaking to my grandfather. Now, my grandfather, to give you a bit of context, is the guy who started my family business. He is 83, I think, and he was having a discussion with his golf club, right? So picture the scene. You're talking, generally speaking, affluent, retired folk, right? And all of them voted near enough, I think, exclusively to leave, which is no surprise. Mm-hmm. And all of them still, given what's happened, still voted, would not change their minds because they had this vote the other day. And I said to him, yes, but that is a very small demographic and not very representative, in which he agreed. However, what's interesting is I actually voted to leave, very much against the status quo of what all of my age group did and what all of my friends indeed did. Now, the question is why? Well, if you look at what my friends do and where they are located, they're all based in London. Now, these are childhood friends that moved to London for the bright lights. And there's a whole other discussion there that we can maybe go on to if we've got time. They moved to London for that reason. There are a lot of them in the financial services sector, working Canary Wharf and all the rest of it. And similarly to what I just said with my grandfather and his discussion group, they don't think they are, but they are in this very much bubble where all that they see and hear all day is Europe, finance, centre of London, this thing, that, and the other thing. But it's the same views, right? Just round and round in a circle. So it was inevitable that they were all going to say, oh my God, it's the worst thing if we were to leave Europe because our jobs will be at risk and the bank will be at risk and all the rest of it. And what they forget is the managers, the owners, the directors have an agenda as well. Don't forget.
Yeah, that's true.
It was quite obvious to me that was going to happen. Now, and on this point, myself, who had classed maybe entrepreneurial business owner, let's say a business owner, let's put that simply, and another one of my friends who's also a business owner, the same age, and also Manchester, both voted to leave. And you ask yourself, well, why is that? Because particularly with my business, I do a lot of import and export of luxury goods, watches specifically, in and out of Europe. And you might think to yourself, and I sometimes think to myself maybe, well, it's very easy nowadays because there's no VAT, there's no real issues with customs because it's this one market type scenario.
Yeah.
You look at the flip side of this and you go, well, are there going to be all these tariffs, Merkel suggesting and all the rest of it? And I'll tell you why it's utter nonsense. It's very simple. Think about how many Audi cars are in the UK, how many BMW cars, that's just cars, right? And all the other industries that are involved. How much stuff that Germany, for example, France, all these countries actually export into the UK.
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously telling me, the UK is one of the biggest markets for cars. That's why I just use that example, particularly German cars. You're seriously telling me that the CEOs, the heads of companies, the shareholders, who are global, by the way, let's not forget that's how these companies work, are going to vote in favour and not pressurize the Eurozone to not give us a fair deal.
Yeah.
Why? There's no benefit to them, right? Money talks, right? It's as simple as that. And if you've got billions of pounds on the line, and the billions of pounds on the line is, if you put in tariffs, then all of a sudden, obviously, what happens? Chinese car manufacturers, Asian, South American, all the rest of it, companies will spring up, or British cars themselves, will actually everyone will drive Jaguars, all the rest of it, and they'll become a better brand for it, and they'll become a world-beating brand. So I look at things positively, right? You can't change it. We are leaving, no issue whatsoever. You look at the positive side of it. How many jobs might be created now? Because if these tariffs come in, which they won't, I'll tell you why they won't, but if they were to come in, well, maybe what they'll do is Audi, BMW, and all these companies will actually have production plants in the UK. That happens in other industries as well, where they decide, hold on, we'll ship all the raw materials, we'll set up a UK limited company, and the UK limited company will service the UK. What does that do? Brings more jobs, prosperity, and all the rest of it to surrounding areas. So where's the loss here? I can't see it. Okay, so that's one thing. On the tariff point, just yesterday, and this is, just so in case you're listening to this late, it's just Friday the 26th of January 2018 this happened. Bombardier, which is, I believe, a Canadian company, has exposure in the UK for manufacturing facilities of certain parts, and also, not only that, but a lot of their suppliers are UK-based. The US government were trying to put a tariff of 292%.
Yeah, I saw that.
On top of the pricing because of competition and to keep basically Boeing and all the rest of it cozy. what the US Supreme Court ruled 4-0, which is all nil, that is completely not just unconstitutional, but it's outrageously unfair and it's not going to happen. So that is the sort of thing that's going to happen with the Eurozone. And the reason that which this is taking so long and so painful is really simple. I spoke to some of my suppliers who are European and they said the same thing. Most people in Europe aren't that fond of the Eurozone, or if they are, they're very, very pro it, right? So there's these two camps. If all of a sudden, which is going to happen, by the way, Brexit is very successful, we become better for it, what do you think Holland do?
Got to agree.
Portugal do? What do you think all these countries do? They go, why the hell are we in the Eurozone? It makes Europe is big, it's 350 million, no question. But what about the other, I don't know, few billion people in Asia? What about all these things that we could possibly go and look at? All these kind of, the BRIC countries, they call it, Brazil, Russia, India, China, right? And there's Africa, there's loads of stuff. What happens with those guys? So it's in Brussels' interest, because remember, this is the other thing to remember, everyone has their own agenda, right, in everything. In Brussels, the agenda is such that a quick deal would, one, be very, very detrimental to what Europe's mission is, to provide this one world, one all the rest of it, which doesn't work in my opinion, and I think it's proven not to work. And I think the second thing is, these people, they are paid by and work, that is their entire living, their pensions, all the rest of it, by Brussels and the parliament there. So if they get a deal through, they get a deal through very, very swiftly, efficiently, which they could do, by the way, in trade, all that would happen is they then got to put their jobs at risk, all their families at risk, all the rest of it. So personally, they have a lot to lose. People forget all these things. There's always personal emotion goes into it, big decisions with prime ministers. They're human beings, right? I just saw The Darkest Hour, which is a great film. I'd recommend it highly, about Churchill and how and why he decided not to go down the peace deal route with Mussolini brokering it with Hitler, basically fully going war and hammer and tong. And whether it's true or not remains to be seen, but the point is this. He allegedly got the tube on the day in which he was giving his speech. And at this point in time, his speech was going to be all about a peace deal, and that was the way forward and all the rest of it. He then listens to the people, the public, the general public, on this tube, or however it actually happened in real life. And everyone's like, well, we'd rather die and, fight for what we believe in than actually, just submit to this person and all the rest of it. Why am I telling you this? Because it's exactly the same scenario. When you're cocooned, whether it's in central London, wherever you are, you become very intolerant, or intolerant's not the word. You just don't see other people's opinions, other people's views, right? And it's the same. It's the same in this instance. If you could go to a certain fishing port and they're very, very anti-Europe because of this and that and the other, and you go somewhere else, you've got to look at it as a whole piece, right? And the reason I'm very pro it is because I believe that Britain was a very powerful country. Of course it was. I believe it was, right? One of the most powerful in the world. Again, you watch another great program called The Crown on Netflix, and you see, and I didn't know a lot of the history, how powerful the Commonwealth and the UK was. Even in Queen Elizabeth's reign, right? It's been a long reign, but it's not that long in history terms. And why has the country become kind of watered down? It's almost embarrassing now. If you're British, the identity's become, getting a bit political here, it's become UKIP, BNP, or far-right groups. And I'm Jewish, right? So I can say these things with some degree of certainty. You see that British flag or English flag with St. George's flag, whichever one to call it. And you see that flying and you think, oh, it's got to be a redneck, it's got to be someone else. I'm proud of the country, what it stands for, the rest of it seems to have disappeared in this country. You go to the States, people follow their college football team for life. They will literally travel hundreds, if not thousands of miles to go to the Orange Bowl, this bowl, whatever bowl they have, a bowl of fruit, whatever it is, for sport. In the UK, you won't find people who go to Birmingham, Cambridge, Nottingham, whatever. Once they've gone, they're not alumni. They just use it and they go. That's the mentality in England these days. And I think what would be great is we can get to a point where we're proud of our heritage. I put a post up the other day actually about my family business, and I'm very proud of it. Now, you could look into that and you'll see, it's gone bankrupt a few times. It's had a CVA and a pre-pipe, which is slightly complex financial things. And some people will hide behind that and go, oh, it never happened, or it's embarrassing. I don't believe in that. I believe everything, the whole what doesn't kill makes you stronger, right? You have to learn. You learn in those points. I said this in the talk, didn't I, about Will Smith and different people I've heard say this. You learn in the times where you're vulnerable, where your back's up against the wall, you learn in the time of weakness. You do not learn very much, albeit your head grows a bit bigger because you've got an ego when you're doing well, right? So at the moment of time, my business is doing very well. I'm not learning all that much. I'll tell you what I do learn. I learn the deals that I'm missing. I'm more interested in why I'm missing them than the ones that I'm making. Do you understand what I mean here?
Yeah, totally get what you're saying. And I think also, I mean, I'm not really too how do you say it, extreme on this, but I think the comment that you made about people not being able to take different opinions is quite true in some cases, because I mean, I've sort of listened to both sides, but I'm not really too sure. But I think you made some very good points there.
Do you know why you're not too sure? And I'll tell you why you're not too sure. And this is another massive problem, is because the people that actually stand up and say, this is what I believe in, and it goes back to your first point, and this is why and all the rest of it, are almost branded as radicals and crazy and all the rest of it. And what happens is you get this watered down version in the media. And again, people don't understand it. It alarms me that do not understand how much bias the press have in this country. They think it's just the US that has Fox News and CNN that's so polarized. But you look at the Telegraph, via the Daily Mail, via this, via that, via the other, they've all got a massive view. And if you just take a moment to read one story, you'd see a totally different angle on the story. Now, and this is the problem, you know, look at what we voted on, really, right? It was 52-48, was it? Or 51-49, I forget the exact number. Like, but near enough, you know, polarized. And why was it so polarized? It's an enormous decision. Well, one, you could say different people have different opinions. That's fine. But I would argue it's just because, as simple as this, nobody had enough information to make an informed decision upon, which is appalling. Because the information that was given, the big number that was touted, the £350 million that was touted, that was branded on the side of that bus that said this is going into the NHS, has now been proven to be an absolute lie. So you then start to think, well, what did people even vote on? Because you can imagine that a good percentage of that franchise voted on the back of that one soundbite of information. Yeah. And similarly, don't get me wrong, on the other side of the fence as well, we'll never get these deals, all the rest of it, which again has soundbite. So both camps, and it doesn't matter what side of the fence I'm looking at it impartially for a second. The information that was given was you had to basically put a lot of work in, root through all these different things to get any head of a tail. And even then, it's so hard to figure out. So there's a big problem there as to how can we get the information. You've heard of this whole Donald Trump thing with fake news. That's a big issue because we don't know anymore what is and what isn't real, because it's so easy, which is great and also bad, to spread your own message. So you can't, I think I saw the other day, I think it was, I don't want to get this wrong, one of the previous Dragon's Den, and I don't think it was Theopathetes, it was a previous guy, and I can't remember his name, so I'm just going to say it's one of the Dragon's Den people, retweeted something about an amount of money of tax that was being spent or something of this nature. I should know the specifics better, so I'm sorry about this. But basically speaking, what he said was utterly wrong because he'd retweeted it from an account that wasn't affiliated to anyone. And they had to go and correct it, right? The problem is the initial tweet, because it was quite controversial, got 100,000, 1 million, whatever views, all the rest of it, impressions. The tweet he sent to correct it got a 10th, if not 100th of that viewing. So,
I think I saw this.
Yeah, you saw this. So this is what's happening now, and it's alarming, and we a different discussion for another day is all about how social media can be used for good and for bad, and how those companies really have more of they need to be more, careful and considered as to how and who they're allowing to say things. There's got to be freedom of speech. I'm all for that, but it has to be, in a certain framework. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think it's quite good to get your opinions on that, actually. And I think on that note, I think we could probably end it here. I mean, I'd like to thank all our listeners for tuning in, and you can catch us on social media, give your feedback. All the links will be down below, and we'll also link Charles's social media as well as his business if any of you are interested. Once again, just before we finish, I'd like to thank Charles for coming on once again. It's been really great to hear your opinions on stuff. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys. I'm sorry if I droned on a bit too much politically, but it grinds my gears a bit, as you might figure.
No. It's been really interesting, actually, to hear your opinions on it. Anyway, thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.